Peter and the Magic Shadow by Enid Blyton. Once upon a time there was a little boy called Peter who was very fond of sardines. One morning he had them for breakfast and he had 7 sardines, one after the other. Now, this is a lot for a little boy to eat, and his mother was quite cross with him. "Peter, you really smell of sardines," she said. At that moment the cat walked in and purred loudly round Peter's chair. "Look, there's a puss after you," said Peter's mother. "Perhaps she thinks you are turning into a great big sardine because you have eaten so many." Peter shooed away the cat, picked up his satchel, and went out in the sunny morning to go to school. A dog came running up. He smelled sardines too, and Peter had to shoo him away. Now Peter was late, so he took a shortcut to the wood. Before long, a strange cat came running up to him. It was a brown cat with bright blue eyes, and it had a very long tail. It also smelled sardines. Peter said, "Shoo, cat, shoo," and the cat ran away. But it followed Peter all the time. It came nearer and nearer, and when Peter stopped in a nice patch of sunshine, the cat stood just at his heels, sniffing. Now the cat couldn't eat Peter, of course, but as his shadow smelt of sardines too, the cat began to lick up Peter's shadow. It licked, and very soon there was hardly any shadow left. Peter suddenly looked down and saw the cat. "Oh, you bad cat, you naughty cat!" cried poor Peter. "You're eating my shadow! Oh, I must have a shadow. Everyone has one. What can I do now?" He began to cry, and a little man came running between the trees, and it was a pixie, as Peter could very well see. "Has my cat been hurting you?" asked the pixie. "It is a very bad cat. It's eaten nearly all my shadow," said poor Peter, sobbing. Peter certainly looked very peculiar without a shadow, and the pixie was surprised. "How dare you do such a thing?" he scolded his cat. "You greedy creature! Just because this little boy has eaten something like you nibble at his shadow? Why, there is hardly any of it left. Now what is he to do?" "Meow," answered the cat in a mournful voice, very sad and sorry because it had done wrong. "Can I buy a new shadow somewhere?" asked Peter. "No, I'm afraid shadows are not sold anywhere," said the pixie, scratching his head and thinking hard. "I could cut you a nice shadow from a bit of the night sky, of course, but it wouldn't really do for you." "Well, you must think of something else," said Peter. "After all, it was your cat that took my shadow." "Oh, yes, quite," said the pixie. He looked at his cat. "I know my cat shall give you her shadow. She's eaten yours, so it's only fair you should have hers," said the pixie. The pixie took out a pair of scissors and looked down at his cat. She had a nice blue-grey shadow stretching behind her. Snip, snip, snip went the scissors as the pixie cut round the shadow. When he had finished, he rolled it up neatly and went over to Peter. He took out a tube of glue and squeezed some onto Peter's heels. Then he quickly stuck the shadow in place and unrolled it till it lay flat. "There," he said happily. "You've got a nice shadow. Aren't you pleased?" said the pixie. Peter looked down, feeling very pleased indeed, but he wasn't pleased for long. Poor Peter stood and stared at the shadow, for it wasn't the shadow of a human. It was of a cat. Wasn't that strange to hear? There was a cat's head, pointed ears, 4 legs, and a tail. Did you ever hear of something like this? "Take this shadow away. I don't want this shadow. This is not for me," cried Peter. But the pixie was gone, carrying his cat under his arm. Peter went to school, crying bitterly. He has got used to this funny little shadow now, of course, but if you look and if you know a boy called Peter, have a look at his shadow, will you? If it's just like a cat, you'll know how he